Boruto sneezed, rubbing his hands together and holding them closer to the fire. It had been 2 whole days since he had met his teacher's cousin, Mirai, and she was nothing if not persistent. So persistent, in fact, that he had been unable to make a campfire for the past 2 nights. That led to a long, sleepless night of tossing and turning and shivering. The Land of Fire, contrary to its name, was not warm at night, and the small sleeping bag he had packed didn't do him much good. Not for the first time, Boruto wished one of his chakra releases was fire. He sneezed again. Boruto scowled and kneeled, taking a small pot of tea out the fire and sighing in relief as he drank it. It wasn't anything fancy, just boiled river water and some local herbs, but it warmed his insides. If Mirai found him, he'd just have to deal with it. Boruto was tired of being cold. So far, his vacation was not turning out how he thought it would be. The journey from the Hidden Leaf to the capital had been quick, with many small towns in between. He hadn't truly needed to survive in the wilderness until now. Now that he did, he dearly missed the modern conveniences afforded to him. Running water, warm running water, electricity, a soft bed, hot food, a roof over his head that didn't let rain fall on him like the branches of this stupid tree, Boruto mentally screamed. Boruto managed to avoid the Hidden Leaf and any of its ninja by cutting far south, well below the village's borders, and heading due east with haste. He was actually surprised by how easy it was. He hadn't seen or heard anyone following him, though that didn't mean anything. An Inuzuka hound could be following his scent, or a microscopic Aburame bug could be spying on him at that very moment. He just didn't know. Old feelings of jealousy flared to life that his sister Himawari had unlocked the Byakugan, but not him. It would be so much easier to remain anonymous with the all-seeing eyes of the Hyuga. Finishing off his tea, Boruto wrapped himself in his sleeping bag like a cocoon. Morning came much too early. Boruto was awakened by a loud, intrusive sniffing sound, and a soft, wet prodding on his face. "Knock it off," he said sleepily, slapping away the offending source. A low growl made his eyes snap open. He came face to face with a very large, very offended-looking panda. "Ah!" Boruto yelled, jumping out of his sleeping bag and flying into the tree he had been sleeping under. The bear seemed to laugh at him before turning and rooting through his pack for a few moments, before tearing out a large plastic bag of assorted candy. "Hey, that's mine!" Boruto yelled, his brain's higher functions quickly rebooting. He was a ninja. This was a bear. He had already taken down one before, for a stupid D-rank mission. Dropping to the ground and landing on the balls at his feet, Boruto weaved the hand seal for the Shadow Clone Jutsu. 2 flashes of smoke later, Boruto and his 2 brothers sprinted forward. The bear, seeing that its target was not normal, moaned in annoyance before turning and galloping away through the forest. "After him," Boruto ordered, both him and the clones picking up their pace. The 3 of them burst through the underbrush after the bear. Following the trail of fallen candy, one of the clones tripped over a protruding root and fell face first into the ground, disappearing in a plume of smoke. Boruto growled. "Water style, water!" Boruto screamed as he felt something tighten around his ankle as he was violently thrown skyward. He saw the rush of wood coming at him, and then he knew nothing. "Hey, you think he's gonna be alright?" Boruto heard a voice ask. He was faintly aware of something poking him in the belly. "Yes sir, he coming around now," another voice commented. Boruto groaned as his eyes fluttered open and the harsh glare of the sun burned his corneas. "Can we eat him?" Bolt heard another voice ask. Adrenaline began to flood his system. "Nah, you don't look too tasty," a voice answered. "I'm not food," Boruto declared indignantly, as loud as his hoarse voice would yell. His eyes fluttered open to the sight of 3 men surrounding him, one poking him with a stick. He was hanging several feet in the air, a rope wound tightly around his ankle that ran into the treetops. The 3 men took a few steps back as Boruto regained consciousness. Boruto blinked a few times as he examined them. There was an older, balding man with a long white beard who had the stick and was poking him, or rather a cane, Boruto amended. Flanking him were 2 younger men, both wearing working clothes that were stained with sweat and dirt. None of them appeared to be ninjas, much to Boruto's relief. "Can you get me down?" Boruto asked a bit impatiently. His head felt swollen and heavy, and his thoughts were sluggish. Probably from hanging upside down for so long, Boruto thought. The 3 men shared a look with each other. "Ain't you a ninja? Get yourself down," one of the younger men said, pointedly looking at the pouches of shuriken and kunai in his belt. Though he hadn't worn his headband, his weapons and manner of dress still gave him away. Boruto scowled before taking a deep breath and pulled himself upwards. His abdominal muscles ached from the sudden extortion, but he persevered. Grabbing the rope for support, Boruto reached into one of the pouches on his belt and withdrew kunai. A quick slash cut the rope, and a deft mid-air twist left Boruto standing on his feet as he fell to the ground. The two younger men clapped like they had seen a circus animal perform a trick, wide smiles adorning their faces. Boruto felt a headache coming on. He wasn't sure if it was from being hung upside down for so long or because of the locals. The old man stepped forward and prodded him in the stomach twice with his cane. "Can you not do that?" Boruto said, gently knocking away the offending stick. Sorry, the old man apologized. He didn't sound like he meant it, in Boruto's opinion. With a slight scowl, Boruto began to walk back through the brush towards where he thought his camp was. Memories of how the bear had gotten away with its theft came flooding back, and Boruto felt his face heat up in embarrassment. If this had been a mission, his friends would have never let him forget that night. Boruto was aware that the three men were following him through the underbrush. He ignored them. Maybe they would go away. A few minutes later, Boruto found his camp, and thanked whatever gods there may be that nothing more was damaged or stolen. Though it did look like some small woodland creature had made a nest in his sleeping bag. Quickly going about packing up his camp and gathering his things, Boruto sighed as he heard the brushes part, and 3 sets of footsteps stepped into his camp. "Well, I'll be," one of the younger men said. "You done been camping in Demon's Bear Woods," the old man hummed and nodded. Boruto rolled his eyes. "Demon Bear? Right," he thought. "Can I help you?" Boruto asked with thinly veiled politeness. The 3 men's eyes got big and began to water. "You'd really do that?" one of the young men asked. No, it means," Boruto began to explain. Clearly they had misunderstood him. The old man hobbled over to him, vigorously shaking his hands. "Please come to our village, we desperately need ninja's help," he croaked. Boruto opened his mouth to tell the old man to get lost, but couldn't find it in his heart. He sighed wearily. Fine, he reluctantly agreed. He was tired of roughing it in the sticks anyways. A soft, warm bed would do him some good. His clothes were far dirtier than he ever allowed them to get, and his hair was in desperate need of care. The 2 younger men broke into cheers and dancing, causing Boruto's headache to worsen. "Lead the way," Boruto prompted, urging the 2 idiots to stop making so much noise. Together the 4 of them headed farther east into the valleys and gulches that separated the Land of Fire from the ocean. The village the 3 men called home was barely a village. It was a grouping of hovels that were built on the mountainside, miles away in every direction from civilization. There wasn't even a road leading to or from the village. Boruto wasn't even sure it was on the map, because the villagers didn't have a name for it. It was simply home. There were perhaps 100 people living there in total, dwelling in wooden shacks and shanties with roofs made of straw. The people were all older, in their late teens at the very youngest. There were no children. They were all thin, and their clothes were old-fashioned and threadbare. Boruto could tell they were very poor. "This way," the old man said, guiding Boruto towards the largest and most well-made of the shacks. It was taller and wider than most of the other shacks, and seemed to have been built with some degree of skill. The wood was stained and treated to endure the elements and rot, and the straw roof was woven and packed tightly to keep out the rain. The inside was plain, with only one room. In the center was a great pit with a roaring fire and several men and women gathered around, all elders from their appearance. As Boruto and the old man entered, they all turned to look at them. Their gazes drifted from Boruto's face to his appearance and then back to his face. Many smiled, coming to the same conclusion the older man did in the forest. He was a ninja. One of the men sitting around the fire stood up, a wide smile adorning his features. "Excellent job, elder. Where did you find him?" he asked the older man next to Boruto. The old man chuckled. "He was caught in one of those traps in the forest," he explained. Boruto fought to keep his blush down. Excellent, the man declared. "Greetings, I am Satoshi of the Land of Frost." Satoshi said in greetings, bowing ever so slightly at the waist. "Mizuki, my name is Mizuki," Boruto said, returning the bow. "Best not use his real name. Hopefully Mizuki wouldn't mind if he ever found out." "And you're from the Hidden Leaf. Where's your headband?" Satoshi asked. "I'm, not on active duty at the moment," Boruto said, dodging the question. "You said you were from the Land of Frost? What are you doing so far south?" Satoshi and the others in the room frowned. "Our home was destroyed in the 4th Great War, and the country is yet to recover enough for us to return," he explained. Ah, Boruto said. The fighting was heaviest in the lands of frost, hot water, and sound. They were all redrawing the maps to adjusting the borders where Madara Uchiha and the tailed beasts had done battle. Entire mountains were crushed, whole forests were burned, and rivers ran red with the blood from the battlefields. Many people were displaced and forced to become refugees. Do not pity us, young ninja, Satoshi said. We have been brought closer together as a people due to our struggles. And while we miss our homes dearly, we all survived the war. That is all that matters. Boruto just nodded. The Land of Fire had been mostly untouched by the war, except at the very northernmost edge of its borders. Let us not dwell on such unpleasant things. Come, we are about to have supper, Satoshi said, gesturing for Boruto to join them around the fire. Boruto did so, sitting down at the space that was made for him. An elderly woman scooped a few spoonfuls of white soup into a large wooden bowl and handed it to him. Before moving on to serve her fellows, Boruto dragged a spoon through the soup. It was some sort of watery rice porridge that was more water than rice. Judging from the envious looks he was receiving from some of the others, he had clearly gotten more than his fair share. Boruto guessed that the reason everyone was so thin in the village was because of their lack of food. What they had given him was probably more than what most people had all day. Not wanting to appear ungrateful or rude, he quietly ate his meal. It was bland and tasteless. More hot water with occasional starchy chunk of rice than actual porridge. But it was all these people had. The mood around the fire was quiet and somber, and it made Boruto feel restless. So, he said, trying to lighten the mood, what did you guys need my help for? Something about Boruto hesitated. What was it? Demon Bear? Yeah, Demon Bear. Demon Bear? If anything, the mood in the shack got worse. We've been attacked by a large creature, Satoshi explained, clearing his throat. It appears to be a bear, but it's much larger. A fully grown man could walk under its legs without bending his knees. It comes at night from the forest and destroys our fields, eating what little we have grown. If it is not stopped, we will not survive. Boruto frowned, but thought that the villagers were over-exaggerating. No animal grows that large. How come you haven't put a request into a ninja village? Boruto asked. The villagers averted their eyes in shame. We have not been able to raise the money to request such assistance. Given that the nature of our problems would almost certainly elevate our request beyond D-class, we would be unable to pay for services rendered, Satoshi said. Oh, Bolt said, mentally berating himself. Of course they can't pay for official village assistance, they can barely feed themselves, he thought. Seeing the downtrodden faces of the elders around him, Boruto spoke up. Well, don't worry, I'm here now and I'll take care of this demon bear or whatever else is in that forest. Boruto's grin widened as small smiles and happy, unshed tears gathered in everyone's eyes. This was what being a ninja was about, whether he was part of the Hidden Leaf or not, helping people. After everyone finished eating, Satoshi led Boruto to a small hut near his house that he was to spend the night in. It was the same high quality as the hut he had previously been in, obviously made for the village leader's use. They were giving him their nicest dwelling because he was helping them. Looking around, Boruto could tell that someone was living there before him. They moved out, albeit temporarily for him. That night as Boruto fell asleep, he vowed he would help the people from the Land of Frost before he moved on. Boruto didn't get much sleep that night. He woke early, rising with the dawn, and went through the form of the gentle fist that his grandfather, Hiyashi Hyuga, had taught him, and his sister. Ever since fighting Mirai at the capital, he had dedicated himself to staying in top form. If he ever had to fight another ninja, the gentle fist would be his greatest weapon. It was relaxing in a way. It was more of a long, complicated dance than a series of forms for taijutsu. He could get lost in the stances, long sweeps of the legs, flowing strikes of the palms, piercing thrusts of fingers. Boruto simply let his body run through the motions as his mind wandered. That was how Satoshi found him. I see the village is in good hands, the elder commented, drawing Boruto's attention. Boruto immediately stopped and straightened his clothes, making himself presentable. Good morning, he said with a nervous chuckle. Good morning indeed, Satoshi greeted with a slight bow. Boruto thought he seemed to be more cheerful than he was last night. Boruto noticed a gathering of villagers a few huts down. If you feel up to it, Satoshi said almost conversationally as if he didn't know how to approach the subject. We formed a hunting party which will lead you into the forest. Boruto just nodded and let Satoshi lead him down to the assembled men. They were young compared to the rest of the villagers, between the ages of 30 and 40. They wore the same threadbare robes as the rest of the villagers, with their loins girded in the length of white cloth holding their hair out of their face and eyes. On their backs were quivers of crude arrows with even cruder bows in their hands. By the grim looks of determination they wore, Boruto knew that either the demon bear would die, or they would. This was the only home they had known, and they had nowhere to go. They would fight for their homes. "Let's go," Boruto said, tightening the belt that held his shuriken pouches. The men from the village led Boruto through a rough path hewn into the underbrush. It looked like it had been an animal trail at one point, but it had been adopted for human use. Their path led them up a steadily rising gulch between two mountains. A small creek ran down the middle, providing a source of fresh water for the village. Boruto noticed that the higher they climbed, the less animals he saw. There were no squirrels jumping from branch to branch overhead, and no birds were singing their songs. It was eerily quiet. When the sun was highest in the sky, the group finally took a break. Resting near the creek, men dropped their bows and cupped both their hands, taking long drinks of the cold spring water. Boruto kneeled over the water, washing the grime from his face. He hated hiking through the woods. The sound of bushes being pushed aside drew the attention of everyone. A large black nose pushed its way into their clearing, attached to a snout covered in shaggy black hair. "It's here, the demon bear," one of the men shouted, as he fumbled with his bow. One of the more prepared men knocked an arrow and set it loose. Boruto watched as it hissed through the air and pierced the bushes. There was a pained yelp followed by a loud roar as the bear galloped into the clearing, roaring in anger and pain. It was a large bear, Boruto gave them that, but it was no demon bear, and it wasn't anything he couldn't handle. Hell, the demon bear he and his team subdued before the Chunin exams was bigger than this. The men shot a hail of arrows at the bear as it charged them, most missing completely and bouncing off rocks with soft clicks of metal striking stone. Boruto sprung into action, sticking both hands into the pouches hanging at his side, and withdrawing them, 3 shuriken held between his fingers in each hand. With practice ease born of hundreds of hours of practice, he threw them with expert precision. The first barrage maimed the bear's shoulder, forcing it to turn away. The second sunk deep into the animal's body, burying themselves in soft flesh. The bear moaned in pain and the men charged. Forgetting their bows, Boruto dashed forward, using the agility born from years of harsh tutelage under his grandfather. He was upon the bear in an instant and struck it in the neck with an open palm strike, channeling his chakra into the blow. Boruto heard the bone snap, and the bear fell dead. More cheers. Men ran up to him, patting him on the back and exclaiming their thanks. Boruto smiled and said it wasn't a problem. "We'll have to take it back," one of the men said excitedly. "This will be the first time we've had a meet in a long time." Boruto smiled sadly at that. "Shadow clone jutsu," he uttered under his breath, weaving the necessary hand seals. 2 clones of Boruto emerged from the smoke and jogged forward. One went into the forest and cut down a small tree, while the other procured some rope from one of the other men. Together they latched the bear to the tree and hoisted it between them. "Ready to go?" Boruto asked, while the men looked at him in wonder. Really? They shouldn't be so amazed by a simple clone jutsu. His dad could summon a literal army of them. Skilled users could make clones out of elements that created effects when they died, and this was basic stuff. The hunting party gave one last cheer before heading back down the mountain. The entire way, Boruto's thoughts kept wandering back to the bear. It wasn't nearly large enough to warrant the name Demon Bear. He was right. They returned to the village later that night, to the waiting crowd of Satoshi and the other village elders. 2 members of the hunting party presented the bear that Boruto's clones drug into the center of the village. "You fools," Boruto heard Satoshi yell. "That is not the demon bear. This is a cub compared to that monster." One of the elders stepped forward, the one that had found Boruto on the mountain. "Peace, Satoshi. This bear will feed our village for an entire week, and at least one of the dangers of the mountain has passed. We will send the hunting party out tomorrow and try again," he said. Boruto smiled reassuringly as his 2 clones vanished in a plume of smoke. A butcher and 2 of his sons came over and began to haul the bear to their hut when a bellowing roar pierced the silence of the evening. It boomed through the village like thunder, shaking some of the hut's foundations. What is that?" Boruto asked. "It's the demon bear," a man screamed. Everyone turned in the direction they thought the roar originated from. Boruto could see trees swaying in the wind, displacing frightening birds. Only, there was no wind. A few moments later, the largest animal Boruto had ever seen wandered into the village. This was a demon bear. It stood taller than a house, and Boruto barely came up to the beast's knees. Its shaggy brown fur was dyed crimson in some spots, and its beady black eyes displayed a bestial intelligence as his gaze flickered between each of them. The beast's eyes found the bear that Bolt had killed earlier in the hands of the butcher and his sons. It stood on its hind legs and roared in bestial fury before dropping into a mad charge. The butcher and his sons immediately dropped their prize and fled in fear. "Men to arms!" Satoshi commanded, picking up a bow that someone had dropped in a panic. Others did the same, knocking and loosing arrows at the beast. The arrows hissed through the air and caught in the beast's fur. The demon bear only roared in anger. "Its fur's too thick. It's like natural armor," Boruto told them, quickly weaving hand seals. The creek was little more than a small stream running through the village, but it was better than nothing. "Water style, water dragon jutsu," he hissed. A mighty dragon made entirely of water erupted from the stream, enhanced by Boruto's chakra. Its sinuous body writhed in the air as it righted itself and thundered towards the beast. The demon bear turned and fixed Boruto with the furious glare that no animal had the right to possess. The water dragon slammed into the bear's side and wrestled with the beast as Boruto channeled more and more chakra into the jutsu. The water dragon simply made the beast angrier. Shaking off the water's pressure, the bear began galloping towards Boruto. Seeing that it wasn't having any effect, Boruto terminated the jutsu. Boruto began to run, weaving more hand seals. "Lightning style, thunderbolt," he intoned, holding out his right palm. Arcs of electricity surged between him and the puddles of water that lied between him and the bear. The beast howled as lightning coursed through its body, but never stopped in its mad charge. Boruto increased the amount of chakra he was putting into the jutsu, raising the voltage. Still, the demon bear kept coming. Cutting off the jutsu, Boruto ran, weaving the familiar hand seals for the clone jutsu. 2 puffs of smoke erupted behind him, his clones automatically shifting into gentle fist stances. The demon bear charged, rearing back and swiping with one giant arm that was longer and thicker than a tree trunk. The first clone misjudged the reach of the beast and was harshly dismissed. The other clone moved in, striking 3 times with a gentle fist, pumping his chakra into the monster's shoulder in an attempt to cripple it. The bear roared and swung its head at the clone, snapping its jaw closed around Boruto's head. The clone vanished instantly. Boruto winced and struggled to contain the memories of his clone's deaths. The feeling of his skull caving in was not a pleasant one. Withdrawing a handful of shuriken, he began peppering the bear, aiming for its eyes. Out of the corner of his eye, Boruto saw the villagers rallying, picking up bows, and taking pot shots. "It's the thought that counts," Boruto thought sardonically. If anything, the villagers were as likely to hit him as the bear. The bear came charging at him. Boruto stood his ground, his chest heaving for air. His previous 2 jutsus had taken a lot of his chakra. Withdrawing another handful of shuriken, he continued aiming for the beast's eyes. He was rewarded when one of them caught the demon bear's nose, causing the bear to stumble and shake its head to clear the path. The bear recovered, barely daunted. If anything, it was more determined to kill him now. Shifting into his gentle fist stance, Boruto readied himself for the battle to come. From the experiences of the clones, he knew the bear's reach was longer than it appeared, and he knew the safe distance to avoid being bitten. That was all he needed. Dodging the first swipe with the grace of the gentle fist style, he brought down his palm on the bear's elbow, thrusting as much chakra as he could spare into the beast's joint. The bear took a single step back and roared in pain before lunging forward and snapping his jaws closed around the space where Boruto's throat had been only a moment earlier. Dropping to his knees, Boruto avoided his second swipe and rolled forward before springing up. He withdrew a kunai and thrust it deep into the demon bear's belly, only to cut fur. The coat was too thick. The bear galloped with more speed than an animal its size ought to have and swiped at Boruto again. Boruto dashed forward, trying to keep inside the beast's guard to minimize the advantage of its reach. He weaved hand seals faster than he'd ever done before in his life, before jumping and grasping the demon bear's thick fur with both hands. "Lightning style, thunderbolt," he hissed through gritted teeth, channeling raw lightning through both hands. The scent of burning hair wafted into his nose, causing Boruto to gag. The demon bear whimpered in pain, dropping to the ground and flailing back and forth in an attempt to dislodge Boruto. Boruto gasped in surprise as the bear suddenly rolled over. He released his grasp, canceling the jutsu. It wasn't quick enough. He scrambled to his feet only for the full weight of the bear to come crashing down on his left arm. He could very clearly hear the snap as one of his bones was broken like a brittle twig. Boruto screamed in pain, scooting away from the bear and dragging his broken limb with him. Boruto flinched as he saw a small stream of blood erupted from his arm like a fountain in timing with his heartbeat. He could see the unnatural whiteness of bone as it protruded from the wound. He felt sick to his stomach and very faint. "No!" a voice screamed, drawing Boruto's attention. He looked up, and his eyes met the demon bear's. Beady black dots full of malice and hate that pierced his very soul, and they were only a hand's length away. He could smell the putrid breath of the beast, the foulness of decay and carrion. The bear winced as a rock impaled its skull. One of the women of the village stood a few paces away. Several large rocks in her left arm, while her right held one aloft. The bear looked at the woman for a moment before wincing as another rock was thrown at it. The woman had a surprisingly good aim, and the bear roared in anger and charged. Time slowed for Boruto as the bear bore down on the woman, whose face was warped with fear. With a mental clarity he had never before experienced, he stood and moved with speed he didn't know he had. He held his good right arm aloft at his side, his fingers curled back in an open fist that displayed his palm as he channeled chakra into his hand. His chakra coalesced as he condensed it and began to rotate it, the speed increasing at an alarming rate. A high-pitched whirling pierced the dull roar of the battlefield, drawing the beast's natural sense for danger. It turned and only had a moment to see Boruto make his attack. "Rasengan!" Boruto roared, slamming the ball of volatile chakra into the demon bear's scorched fur. Boruto slammed his eyes shut as his wound exploded into light and pressure. He grit his teeth and held his ground, wincing as he heard the sound of flesh being torn asunder and bones being grounded to dust. The villagers watched in awe as the demon bear, larger than even the largest of their huts, was sent spiraling away from Boruto, and its body torn to pieces from the sheer power behind the jutsu. The bear was bodily thrown through the forest, tearing up trees and digging a trench 2 feet deep in the ground. It collapsed in a heap of bloodied flesh and burnt fur before whining pitifully before sitting forever. Boruto drew in a long, ragged breath as the enormity of what he had accomplished set in. I did it, he thought. I used the Rasengan. That was his last thought before he fell unconscious. Boruto groaned as his eyes fluttered open and a dull ache throbbed in timing with his heart. "Oh God." "Easy there, child," a soothing voice cooed. "You're safe." Boruto struggled to move his eyes in the direction of the voice. It was an older woman, dressed in a white apron that was stained with blood. "You had us worried for a moment there. Thought you wouldn't pull through," she said. "Who are you?" Boruto managed to gasp out. His tongue was painfully dry. As if understanding, the woman held a bowl of water to his lips, which Boruto drank greedily. "My name is Chie, Satoshi's wife. I'm a doctor. Though I haven't used my skills since leaving the Land of Frost, I managed to patch you up," the woman Chie explained. Boruto chuckled, which sent him into a coughing fit. "Thanks," he managed to get out, taking deep gasps of air. The old woman smiled kindly and patted his cheeks. "Don't you worry, my dear, just rest. The village is safe, thanks to you," Chie said. Boruto sighed and closed his eyes, all too happy to obey the doctor's orders. It was nearly 3 weeks before Boruto was ready to leave. Chie, the old hag as Boruto had grown to know her, insisted he stay longer. Boruto assured her that he was fine. He and his sister healed faster than most people. It was something his dad said ran in the family. Chie had none of that and demanded he rest until he was sure their savior wouldn't die in the mountains because his arm broke again. The village was much livelier than Boruto had ever imagined it could be. The people wore bright smiles and weren't looking so malnourished after Boruto had slain the demon bear. The bear itself provided enough meat for the entire village to survive off for a month, and without the threat of the beast lurking in the mountains, hunting parties were once again safe to venture out. The butcher had mounted the skull of the beast on a post at the entrance of the village, and much to Boruto's embarrassment, the carpenters had created a sign that hung below the skull. Mitsuki Village was what they were named. Boruto prayed that Mizuki would never find the village named after him, or he would never live it down. He'd brag about it just to irritate him. "Are you sure you have to leave?" Satoshi asked, worry clear on his face. Boruto nodded, being careful not to jostile his arm that rested in his sling. "Positive. I was on my way to the Land of Water before I stopped here. I need to resume my journey," he explained. Satoshi nodded sadly. "Here, we want you to have this," he said, handing Boruto a large leather pack. "We don't have any money, but we've all pitched in a little, supplies for the road. She might be a poor doctor, but she makes delicious jerky." Boruto smiled as the old woman elbowed Satoshi in the ribs, hard. "Thank you," Boruto said, a few unshed tears threatening to spill. though they lived in conditions that the Hidden Leaf Academy would have instructed them in for survival. The people here opened their homes to him and shared what little they had. He grew up surrounded by wealth and modern conveniences, and yet he couldn't deny that the people here lived lives as full as anyone in the Hidden Leaf. "Know that you'll always have a home in Mitsuki Village," Chie said, stepping forward and handing him an object wrapped in blue cloth. It was his headband, the scratch of the Hidden Leaf blatantly visible. "Even if you didn't have a place to call home," she added softly. Boruto smiled and nodded, taking the headband and tying it around his forehead. "Farewell, Mitsuki," Satoshi called out as Boruto turned and went on his way. The men of the hunting party cheered and called out his name. It was a hero's farewell. "Ah, Konohamaru, are we almost there yet? I hate this stupid forest," Sarada yelled as she kicked the offending root she had just tripped over. Mitsuki had the audacity to laugh at her atop the snake he had summoned to ride through the forest. "Yeah, just keep laughing, Mitsuki. When we get back to the village, I'm getting the Hokage to teach me how to summon toads. We'll see how fun it is when I summon the toad boss on you while you're sleeping," Sarada yelled, hurling the stick at her only remaining teammate. Now, Konohamaru said, trying to defuse the situation. "We're almost there. The village hasn't been sent aid because they aren't able to pay the fee, but the Hokage has been hearing rumors about an animal that lurks in these mountains. It's a long walk, but it's for a good cause." Sarada grumbled to herself but continued walking nonetheless. She really was going to get the Hokage to teach her how to summon toads when she got back. That was not a threat, it was a promise. As Konohamaru stepped through the two trees and waded through a tall bush, he sighed in relief. "Ah, we made it," he said. "Thank God," Sarada swore. Mitsuki just kept laughing at her. The three of them emerged into a large clearing with a rough path that led up to the village. Two large poles had been erected with the sign that hung between them. Below the sign was a massive skull that Sarada could have walked through without having to bend over. Then she read the sign. "Sarada," Mitsuki said, drawing her attention. "They've named their village after me." Konohamaru chuckled as a student. "I'm sure they didn't name it after you specifically," he said, trying to calm Sarada down. Really, their antagonism was going to drive him to smoking like his uncle. A young man saw them emerge from the forest and waved them over. "Hey, it's rare to see ninjas out this far. What brings you to our part of the woods?" he asked. Konohamaru smiled reassuringly. "We've been sent by the Hokage to help you with your pest problem," he declared. "You mean you're here to kill the demon bear?" a man asked from behind them. Konohamaru turned to face the new man and bowed in greetings. "Yes," he said grimmingly. "Demon bear didn't sound very friendly. My name is Konohamaru, and these are my students, Sarada and Mitsuki," he added, gesturing to each in turn. The old man shrugged indifferently. "My name is Satoshi. I'm the village chief. We found a ninja last month who was kind enough to dispatch the beast for us. Its skull hangs below its name," he said, pointing back to the hanging skull. Sarada paled. "No way, we were sent here to kill that thing?" she asked, pointing at the demon bear's skull in disbelief. Konohamaru's eyes narrowed. "You named your village after Mitsuki, after the ninja who helped you?" he asked for clarification. He didn't know of any other ninja named Mitsuki other than the one standing next to him. Satoshi nodded. "Yes, he is our village's hero. We can never repay him for saving our home. The least we can do is honor his name," the chief answered. "Can you describe this Mitsuki for me?" Konohamaru asked. Satoshi frowned slightly. "Sure, he was about the same height as your students, same age too, I guess. Blonde hair, blue eyes, 2 scratches on both of his cheeks, some kind of birthmark," he said wearily. Sarada gasped. The three of them shared shocked and excited looks. "Boruto!" they all exclaimed as one. Sarada squealed in happiness. She couldn't contain it. Ever since Boruto had run away, she had been in a poor mood. When reports came in that Mirai had fought him outside the capital, she had been so hopeful that he had been found. She couldn't even begin to imagine what he was going through. The happiness of both her and Mitsuki being promoted to Chunin seemed meaningless without Boruto there to celebrate with them. "I'm sorry, do you know Mitsuki?" Satoshi asked, fearing that he had said too much. He and his wife were the only ones to see his scratched headband after going through his things while he was unconscious. If there were ninjas sent to hunt him down, they'd have to torture him if they wanted his location. Sarada shook her head. "He's not Mitsuki, his name is Boruto." "That," Sarada said, pointing at her teammate, "thing is Mitsuki. Boruto is our friend. He ran away from home, and he probably used Mitsuki's name to avoid being discovered." Satoshi looked at the girl's hopeful eyes and knew she was telling the truth. "Please," Konohamaru said, "if you know anything about where Boruto has gone, anything at all, please tell us. Boruto's my student, and the man I consider my brother." Satoshi sighed. "He was here perhaps 6, 7 weeks ago, said he was going to travel the world before he stumbled across our village and helped us. I believe he said he was going to the land of water next, he said, a little guilty about betraying their hero. Sarada's beaming smile told Satoshi that he had done the right thing. These people were Mitsuki's, no, Boruto's friends. They didn't mean harm. Thank you, Konohamaru said seriously, his voice heavy with appreciation. He weaved several hand seals faster than Satoshi's eyes could follow. Shadow clone jutsu, he said. A clone appeared in a puff of smoke. Return to the Hidden Leaf, inform the Hokage about what we found. We're heading for the land of water, Konohamaru instructed. The clone nodded and sprinted off. Thank you for your help, Sarada said. Her smile was infectious. It was nothing, little girl, Satoshi said with a smile. I do hope you find your friend. He is a good young man. Sarada nodded and broke into a jog, following after Mitsuki and Konohamaru as they headed further east. They were a month and a half behind Bolt, and he headed to a land they weren't familiar with. And yet, for the first time in a long time, Sarada had hope. Satoshi sighed heavily. Hey Chie, tell Atsushi to bring his tools. He's going to have to redo the village sign. The kid gave us the wrong name.